Dear students, we have gone through the different types of feminism like Ellen Showalter's gynocriticism, Marxist criticism, Marxist feminism, radical feminism. All these were the different stages of the development of feminism. Several ages had contributed much to the development of feminist theories. You have prominent names, and we have gone through those names in the earlier class, and what you have learned in the previous classes you will find summarized in Peter Barry's sentences. It's already 11 sentences. So if you go through those sentences, you will find that it is a summary of what you had learned in the previous classes. So you will find a few slides for the same purpose. As I've told you in the previous classes, we are continuing with feminism. Feminism is an aspect which really contributed to the development of women and also to literature in general, and we have already seen that. Peter Barry, in his book In Beginning Theory, summarizes the key activities in feminist literary criticism in almost 11 sentences. He thinks that they have contributed much to the activities of feminist literary criticism, and the first one is to rethink the canon, aiming at the rediscovery of texts written by women, and also to revalue women's experience. He also goes on to say that it examines representations of women in literature by men and women. It is also a challenge representation of women as other, as lack, as part of nature. All these terms are other, lack, and nature are put in inverted commas because single inverted commas because he wanted to emphasize that these are the terms used by the women, and it has also got deeper meanings. It also examines power relations. Then it recognizes the role of language in making what is social and constructed seem transparent and natural. It also raises the question of whether men and women are essentially different because of biology or are socially constructed as different. Again, he continues to say that it explores the question of whether there is a female language and a creature feminine, and whether this is also available to men. Reread psychoanalysis to further explore the issue of female and male identity. Again, he continues saying, it questions the popular notion of the death of the author, asking whether there are only subject positions constructed in discourse or whether, on the contrary, the experience, example, of a black or lesbian writer is central. And lastly, he concludes, it also makes clear the ideological base of supposedly neutral or mainstream literary interpretations. From this, we can understand that this is indeed an epoch-making nature, and naturally this is something that is to be understood by the next generation. We have already seen how the black feminism and Dalit feminism contributed much to the development of literature, and you have seen several novels written by feminist writers, and their characters also reveal what the theory that they are trying to implement in literature. Our next slide is about queer theory and LGBT literatures. What is the full form of LGBT? It is lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. This short form or initialization is something that happened in 1990. This initialism is indeed the product of gay liberation movement of America, which started in the year 1969 and along with Stonewall riot in New York. So the terms heterosexism and homophobia are also relevant here. What is meant by heterosexism? It is the prevailing social organization of sexuality. Then what is homophobia? It is the irrational fear of or hatred of same-sex love. So how can these two terms be important to queer theory? We can find that the queer theory is, uh, in a nutshell, it is the name that is given to all these variations. For a long, long time, people believed that only heterosexual sexuality is the accepted norm because society accepts only that. So here, the feeling that if you are different, if you have love for the same sex person, then naturally you are an outcast. And you find that this is indeed that is not acceptable to the people in the society. So, what is the relevance of feminism in this? Feminists regarded patriarchy as oppressive power relations, but sexual minorities like gay and lesbian placed heterosexism on equal terms. So the fight of the feminist was against patriarchy or the patriarchy which was oppressive to the development of women. That was the only reason for the fight of the feminists. But the queer theory or those other aspects LGBT, they think about the sexual minorities. They think for the gay and lesbian and placed heterosexism on equal terms. So they are not averse to heterosexism, nor are they averse to gay and lesbian, but they have nothing against patriarchy as such. So the feminist fight was against patriarchy, while the queer theory was for all sexual minorities. It is based on that. Again, two persons and their theories influenced gay or lesbian theorists. The first one, of course, is Freud, and it is Freud's psychology that really prompted people to think and rethink the already existing norms of sexuality and also of relationships. Freud gave a lot to the proper understanding of human psyche. Psyche means the mind or the thinking process, and it has developed rapidly after the Second World War. As I told you earlier, Freud and his psychoanalysis and his psychology became a tool to treat the shell-shocked soldiers of the World War. And it is from there this theory or this science was developed, and now psychology as a science is dominant in the world, and you can't even think of a world without psychology. That kind of contribution Freud had given to the world through his psychoanalysis and his experiments with people and their thinking process, sexual relationship, and so on. So here you have the two of Freud. The first one is Outline of Psychoanalysis, and the second, Three Essays on Sexuality. These books really made him an authority on sexuality and psychoanalysis, and he was able to explain in equal terms that there is indeed no need for a person to adhere to the one partner. He argued that sexual life was concerned primarily with obtaining pleasure from the body and often beyond the needs of reproduction. He also noted in three essays on sexuality that man need not always find sexual interest in woman. Based on this, the gay theorists formulate that compulsory heterosexuality only supports a bourgeois subject position. So, Freud is not for just one partner or for heterosexuality, and it is on this theory that the gay supporters or people who support gay sexuality argue that this is indeed. There is Foucault, another writer or another critic, and he speaks of his ideas in two works, and the first one is the history of sexuality, and the second, psychology and sexuality. So Foucault's the history of sexuality is a revisory rereading of major theories of psychology and sexuality. To him, homosexuality is an aspect of hermaphroditism and an inversion of the masculine and the feminine in the biological body of one. He noted the shift in the late 19th century where gay homosexuality was distinguished by freeing it from the usual derogatory term sodomy. The term sodomy is taken from the Bible itself, the Old Testament of the Bible, where there is an incident where the Sodom and Gomorrah, two cities, were destroyed by God because they had done they had sinned, and because of that sin, their two places were destroyed. This is clearly seen in, or it is clearly explained in the Bible, Old Testament of the Bible. So the term sodomy comes from there because it is a different way of experiencing sexual pleasure, not by a man and a woman, and maybe they had experimented with the gay and the lesbian. And because of that, it was considered to be a sin, and naturally, those cities were destroyed. So the term sodomy was used in the legal register to indicate gay or lesbian, gay mostly because lesbian came much, much later. So the term sodomy had a derogatory nature, in the sense that it has got all aspects of sin, and people really look down on these people. So he was trying to release the gay people from use or being used as to indicate the term by the term sodomy, and so he really explains his stand in the two works, the history of sexuality and also the work psychology and sexuality. So here his position is indeed something that is accepted by Jonathan Dollimore and Alan Sinfield. So again, you find terms that are connected to gay life: effeminacy, drag, camp, and again, homoerotic, male bonding, homosociality. All these are used in the reading of non or anti-gay texts. Again, you have the queer theory, which started in the year 1990 and deriving from the post-structuralist theories, because there is a question of straight. Straight, the term is put in single inverted commas, the straight sexual formations, and the gay or lesbian readings of literature arose as a critical position because the normal form is straight being straight, and gay and lesbian are just from the side or not so straight. And the term queer was coined by an Italian feminist and film critic, in the year 1990 to refer to the sexual minoritism of gay, lesbian, and bisexuals. You find the terms of gay and lesbian used by people after 1990, and they also started having questions about their existence in society. They also started fighting for equal rights. They should not be marginalized. I hope you still remember the term marginalized because that is the title of our section. So the gay and lesbian were people who were marginalized. All these queer people, queer uh, teachings were put to one side, and people were not accepting the gay or the lesbian people. So naturally, they were looked on or down on or frowned upon by the society, the so-called straight society. As I've told you earlier, the birth of queer theory was in 1990, and it was coined by the Italian feminist who was also a film critic, and it included gay, lesbian, and bisexuals. So, what is meant by the cure? Curing is the process, Queer. Curing is the process of reversing heterosexuality as the accepted norm. In society, we accept only heterosexuality. Curing is the process of reversing this accepted norm. Naturally, people will be against them. And this is why society refused to accept them. And this acceptance came only in 1990 by the using of the term cure, and also from there onward, the earlier acceptance was only minimal, but afterwards it became an accepted norm of sexuality in the world as such. Again, what is cure? It is more than gay and lesbian, because it is not just for gay and lesbian that you use the term cure. For cross-dressing, hermaphroditism, gender ambiguity, and gender corrective surgery, for all these you use the term cure. So it is not just LGBT, it is more than that, and so all these come under cure. But why is this included under marginalization? As I've told you earlier, the society accepted only heterosexuality, and they were totally against homosexuality or lesbianism and any type of corrective surgery. All these came only in the later years. So society refused to accept them and give them a place in the mainstream. This is the reason why they were categorized as marginalized. From the margins, they are slowly coming to the mainstream. But we are learning about these marginalized groups and the problems that are connected with them, and also the theories that come up with these people. So here, the queer theory or even the lesbian theory, everything is indeed some accepted by the world, and they are not part of feminism but maybe away from them. Again, critics like Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, Judith Butler, Adrienne Rich, and Diana Fuss regarded the domain of queer, an independent critical school, separate from feminism. Why is this separate from feminism? Because we have seen in the first wave and the second wave and also in the third wave of feminism, the women fighting for an existence or trying to free themselves from the clutches of the rules of the society, because women cannot be heard. They are just to be there in the background, and they were not given much prominence. So the fight was entirely for the independence of women. And so they did not have a cause to deviate from that. So the fight went on as the first wave, second wave, and the third wave, where you have the black feminism and the Dalit feminism and all aspects of feminism, which stretched on to the different parts of the world, not just in America and England, but in the or even Europe, but to Asia and also Africa and other countries. From there you move on to the queer theory, and while the feminist theorists were totally against the patriarchal dominance and the patriarchal way of suppressing women, they had their own reasons for that, and theories were formulated about feminism. But when you come to queer theory, they don't have much to do with feminism. They fought for a totally different existence. Their fight is not against patriarchy. Their fight is against the society as such, including women. And so their fight is for acceptance of their sexuality. And it is the process of reversing heterosexuality, as I've told you earlier. And naturally, acceptance comes very, very slow. So it took them a long time to get acceptance, and to formulate the queer theory, they had to depend on Freud and Foucault and what they have written. It doesn't mean that Freud and Foucault were speaking about the queer theory or even homosexuality or even lesbianism or gay behavior, but they were putting forward the theory that this is possible. Freud had done a lot of experiments with people or even asked questions to them and had come up with the summary of that. And so his research was complete. And he had reasons to believe that people suppressed their sexuality in the earlier days because society did not accept them. So heterosexuality was the norm. Even then, he had the courage to speak about the variations. And it is based on this the queer theory was formed. And so also Foucault tried to separate or tried to redeem the queer people or the LGBT from the derogatory term by using the derogatory term sodomy. And so that term is pushed to one side, and the term queer has come to dominance in the modern world. So in all these days, you find critics speaking about the nature of human beings and vehemently supporting gay and lesbian. Adrian Rich in Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence speaks of the compulsory speaks of a naturalized behavior, which is the heterosexuality, and it is sanctioned by the existing notion of power. And Adrian Rich argues that because it is sanctioned by this, the roots of lesbianism can be found in the fact that girls are of woman born, a kind of woman identification. Monique Wittig also, though she rejected the theory of woman bonding, observes that the straight mind is an ideological construct and it develops a totalizing interpretation of history, social reality, culture, language, and all subjective phenomena at the same time. Judith Butler, in her work Gender Trouble, attempted to bring in post-structural elements to queer theory by putting forward the theory of gender as performativity. To her, gender identities are a kind of imitation for which there is no original. So queer theory is supported by the postmodern theories or post-structural elements, and the various writers support, even feminists also support the queer theory and they have reasons for doing so. All these reasons are given in the text in explanation. Judith Butler rejects the claim that gender is a natural fact. She also argues that the prohibition of homosexuality in history is the ground that creates one's heterosexual identity. So the man and the woman in the society goes as natural or straight, and it is accepted by the society as such. Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick is another theorist who is very important to queer theory. Her work Between Men and the Epistemology of the Closet, published in the years 1985 and 1990 respectively, she problematizes the notion of sexuality like Judith Butler. She insists on the fact that coming out of the closet happens in different situations, and one may be a gay man or woman within the closet and cannot reveal the same when outside, because society did not approve of them. So they are coming out of the closet because that term itself is very secretive. In secret they are gay or lesbian, but to all outward appearances they are heterosexual. This is the manner in which people lived for a long time. They suppressed their gay or lesbian nature and did not have the courage to bring it to the forefront because the world was not into the acceptance of gay or lesbian. So you find them as homosexual becomes queer, and it is a subject position which people now started accepting. So their sexual behaviors indeed made them different. People change from, people are indeed different from each other. If a person is heterosexual, the other person, if one person is heterosexual, another person may be homosexual. But you look down on those people. Even in our society also you have seen how people looked on these queer people or gay or lesbian or even transgenders. Because maybe gay and lesbian may not be that obvious, but transgenders, you can very clearly find them, and you can, you know that you just push them to one side. You don't make friends with them, because when you make friends with such people, naturally you are frowned on by society. Your family will not accept you or accept your friendship with a transgender. So on, this went on. And so this kind of a sexual difference is not accepted by the society, as I've told you earlier. And this is indeed now in acceptance because rules have changed. You find a few theories, statements of the gay lesbian literary critics, and according to Peter Barry's beginning theory. Peter Barry's book Beginning Theory is very important. We have seen a summarizing of the feminism and feminist theories earlier. He is now summarizing the queer theory or the marginalization, or even gay or lesbian literary critics, and about their different theories were summarized by Peter Barry in his book Beginning Theory. In the first instance, he says that it identifies and establishes a canon of classic lesbian gay writers whose work constitutes a distinct tradition. These are in main 20th century writers. Again, he says gay or lesbian episodes in mainstream work and the discussions as such. For example, the relationship between Jane and Helen in Jane Eyre, rather than reading same-sex pairings in non-specific ways, for instance, as symbolizing two aspects of the same character. So even representation of gay or lesbian in films or even in the novels or even in writings was not the acceptable form in the earlier times. But with modernism and postmodernism, post-structuralism, that is immediately after the 1960s and 1980s, you find these expressions or gay or lesbian attitudes between people explained in detail, or even finding expression in either fiction writing or even in films, and it was accepted by the people. But when D.H. Lawrence started explaining these sexual variations in his novel, he was not accepted by the society at that time. So he moved from England to America, where he was able to write freely and enjoy his life as he liked, because the conventional or the traditional society of England did not accept this kind of variations, and they wanted only the straight type of life from people. And it is not possible to lead a public life with the queer aspect. So if you are a gay or lesbian, queer or even queer like a transgender, your life is miserable, or it was miserable in those early days. But after 1990, you find them having acceptance in society, and you will find in newspapers that gay couple were not accepted in a society or even as tourists, and they were not granted permission to share a room and things like that. And sometimes you find news about them in the newspapers. But now the news is more about their acceptance, and also things that are, or even position that is granted to them, and they become now one of the mainstream instead of being the marginalized. But we were talking about the marginalized group, and we have already found that the gay and lesbian form the marginalized group, and they are also queer, means strange, and naturally not normal according to society. And they find that they are normal by taking on the theory of Freud and Foucault, and those explanations form the basis for their existence and their fight for acceptance. So you find them playing or even having a life of their own and trying to lead a normal life, which is now acceptable in the Western countries, and slowly, even in our India also, this acceptance is coming along. So Peter Barry and his beginning theory is very important. We have found expression for feminism and queer theory in his work, and as such, he summarizes the theories of the literary or literary critics based on these strange theories, or the theories of feminism and also queer. Thank you.